Good evening, guys, and happy Friday to all of your sunshiny faces. I do not have a surprise ending unlike last week. I was like, surprise, we won the football game. We did not. They ended up losing 6-41, I think was the final. It was kind of bad. I told you guys it was going to be really tough. I actually think this team is second in conference, so really tough. But like my dad was saying, we moved the football against this team, which was absolutely like amazing. They actually have one kid on their team that I think already is committed to Notre Dame. Like I said, this team is pretty good. So at least, again, a handful of their kids on the team as well are pretty good. Thing that sort of stunk, like my dad was saying though, was that we kicked off to them first. They ended up scoring on the very first possession. And they got the extra point. So 7-0. Then we go down the field. We're at the like 10-yard line or something like that. And I was like, holy cow, like we're gonna like have this game tied up like right now, or maybe down a point or something like that, or possibly even have the lead. I was like, this could honestly be like a pretty at least somewhat competitive game. So anyways, like I said, we're 10-20 yard line, something like that. I think at least within the 30-yard line, and we ended up throwing an interception. So like I said, wasn't too great. Then, but that was possibility of a potential score there. Again, we were able to move the ball. Then our defense actually stops them on that following drive where they got the interception. So they stop them with, like I said, and I think at this point, I think it was actually the end of the first quarter. We took up a huge ton of time running the football and just running out the clock on offense in general. So like I said, it was either that or else they might have so then we ended up getting the ball back after we stopped them, and then we ended up like I said, the defense stopped them, and then we got the ball back on offense, and I believe that we ended up actually we again did the exact same thing, almost at the exact same spot too, and then ended up not fumbled the football, we lateraled the football and ended up losing it. So like they did like a pitch play and the ball went backwards, and so then it's a live ball and the other team ended up recovering it. So like I said, I think at that point, if that wasn't the end of the first quarter, I think that the other team then ended up scoring off of that drive. So again, here we are where we're probably in the red zone both times with potentials of scoring, and they have the ball 3 times and they only scored 2 of those 3 times, and we had the ball only twice, and we could have possibly scored again had we not turned the ball over both times. And again too, maybe things would have looked a little differently had we scored and then ended up kicking off. So like I said, the first quarter was insanely competitive football, and then even up till halftime I think it was 20-0. Like I said, I think they ended up then scoring on that play, and then we ended up also, I don't think that we turned the ball over again in this first half. But I think that we ended up, we did punt away 1 time. So I think we had the ball only 3 times maybe in the first half. And then, so I think we tried to go down the field, but we didn't. We ended up punting away. And then the punt actually did not go very far. I think it only went to the 50-yard line, and they ended up scoring off that because they had really short field position. So like I said, I think honestly, I want to say maybe in the first half, it was both like 3 possessions, or no, maybe 3 to 4 possessions or something like that. And of their 4, they only scored on 3 of the possessions, and we again were in the red zone 2 of those 3 times, but didn't end up scoring. So again, like my dad was saying too, we were able to move the football. Like we actually looked really good again against a team that was probably is second in conference, which is like crazy because we are bottom of the barrel in conference just about every single year. Honestly, if we are lucky, we will scrape out 1 win. We did last week, and again too, we had the potential right now though to have had 2 wins. Again, if we wouldn't have lost homecoming by 1 point, we possibly would be sitting with 2 wins and actually not be at the bottom. Like I think last year, like I said, the only team that was below us was the team that we ended up beating last year. And then this year, the team that beat us, I don't know that they've won any other games though, but the team that we beat actually ended up beating a different team. I know for sure that we lost to, but I don't think that they might have played them this week, but I think that they hadn't played the team that we only lost to by 1 point. So again, if we were looking at that, we might actually, if they wind up beating that other team, we actually would be above the team technically though that beat us. I think because of like, you know, like however they figure that, like, you know, based on tiebreakers kind of thing, because then we both would have won a game. But I guess head to head they beat us, so I don't know how that works. But if the other team that we beat them, I don't also know how that works. But anyways, so either way, looking at possibly tied for last place right now in conference. Long story short though, I don't entirely know what, like I said, that looks like. So anyways, halftime comes, like I said, we were only down, I think it was only 20 to nothing. And like I said too, like looking at it again, as we kind of knew we weren't maybe going to wind up coming in and beating this team, it honestly was a pretty close, somewhat competitive game again too. But it's like, with a team like that you're playing, that again is like top conference team, you cannot even have a slight mistake. Having a pitch play that you turn the ball over on, or an interception where you turn the ball over on, those ones are mistakes that you make at that, again, the other team is going to make you pay for. So that's why, even too, if you wind up putting up like 14 points or whatever, the other team's still going to wind up putting up more than you most likely. Even if you put up like 30 points, the other team's probably going to put up more than you. So, you know, like, it's just, you can't have any of those kind of like mental mistakes, or like even to just like slight things that could potentially cost you the game. Again, to even just like to make it a competitive game even still. So anyways, you know, like I said, halftime came, it was, you know, looking pretty good. And like I said too, they scored, I guess, 21 then in the second half, but we did wind up scoring once, and I think they no, we got the 2-point conversion. So no, it was 8-41, I think was the final. I think I was thinking the Frost-Off game, because they ended up getting a touchdown, and then they got a touchdown, and then they tried to go for the field goal, and they ended up missing it. But then they actually onside kicked it at the very end of the game, because they scored with like under 2 minutes left or something like that. Again, this was the game before the Frost-Off level, and they were actually only down, I think, 3 touchdowns. So I'm not sure exactly what that would have been, 20 I think to nothing. But then with 2 minutes left, they scored, and then they got the ball back, and then they were actually, I think, in the red zone, but time ran out, so they didn't score again. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's kind of crazy. So anyways, like I was saying though, with the other team, the varsity team that we were playing, again, so also too, 14 of their points, well, I guess at least 12 of their points were pick six. So again, like I was telling my dad too, and these were also too, both of the picks were both also too, I think, within the 30-yard line. So we weren't in the red zone. I think one was in the red zone, the other was within like 30 yards. And they were both ran back for touchdowns, which sort of stinks. But, and then too, like my dad was saying too, there was another pass play that we had that, I think resulted actually in one of the pick six maybe. But the ball fell beautifully. Our quarterback throws the ball. It falls beautifully into a wide open kid's hand, and he dropped it. So again, we were looking at, if we didn't have those 2 pick sixes, potentially too, depending on if we wouldn't have had any of the turnovers at all, and we would have at least scored the 1 touchdown that we did have, and the other one that was definitely in the end zone with the kid had it in his hands. We were looking at a game that was more like a 30-14 like game, sort of. You know, like potentially, you know, somewhere around there. Like, that's a pretty decently competitive game against a team that, again, is potentially second or, you know, somewhere like that in conference right now. And I was like, that's pretty, you know, pretty big. I think that the team that they're supposed to be playing, what's it called, like next week is actually supposed to be one of the big ones where I don't know if it's going to determine first place, but I think it will solidify whether or not they get second place in conference or not, or if they'll be third place in conference, and it might, I don't think it would determine playoffs, but like my dad was saying, like next week their game is going to be kind of, you know, like tough. But looking at it from, like I said, you know, like again, I'm looking at it more from like a building block standpoint, and it stings because like honestly too, it's like, you know, like I still want my high school, you know, like again, I'm several years removed from high school, but like I still want to see my high school do good, even though, you know, by next year, like Jack's gonna be gone, like I'm gonna have no brothers in high school anymore either to root for on the football team. Like, you know, and I even care, you know, I care about football when I was in high school, you know, to go to the football games, cheer for it. But then, you know, every year after that, I had a brother that was playing football for the high school, except for that one in-between year, Matthew and Jack. There was one like gap year where Matthew graduated high school and Jack was still in 8th grade and he wasn't in high school yet, but that was the first year my dad started coaching football for the high school. So we still went to pretty much all of the football games, almost, or not all of them, but a lot of them. So we ended up going to those, like I said, that sort of gap year where they weren't, like nobody was playing. So I was like, this year is going to be the first year, well, like after this year will be the first year where, you know, like I don't have a brother playing anymore, but my dad will most likely still be coaching, and Matthew even said too that next year he wants to coach since he'll be out of college. So, you know, if he has the opportunity, he'd like to. But like I was saying, you know, it's just like, you know, even though it's the end for Jack, it's not like he's a freshman and I can be like, wow, like there's real positive things, or even to like a junior or a sophomore playing up at varsity, you know, or I can be like, oh, well, like, we'll get him next year. I'm like, yeah, but none of my family is, you know, playing on the team anymore. And again, too, hopefully they will still be coaching, which is really nice. But, you know, like, again, I'm looking at it from like a potential, you know, like a building block sort of year and stuff like that too. And I think I was telling you guys that even last week as well, is that like a lot of those kids are not like seniors. Like there's a decent amount of kids that are seniors, but there also is a lot of kids, like our stud running back's actually only a junior. And one of our quarterbacks, he's a senior. Jack's obviously a senior. I think I was telling you guys too, like there's I think 2 maybe offensive linemen that are seniors. One is a freshman that I keep telling you guys about, and there's a couple of other like I think sophomores. Like my dad said, there's maybe 2 sophomores that are also really good. Like most of the offensive line too, my dad was saying like a couple of them will be gone, but like a lot of them will still be around. So he's like, you know, there's still some kids that are actually playing up at varsity that should or could be on the Frost Soft team right now. You know, and so again, it's just sort of that whole building blocks thing of like, you know, this team, you know, potentially could be really good still, you know, in the following years. And again, too, that's building blocks of like, you know, let's see sort of where now with a new coach too, and game planning and, you know, all that kind of different stuff. Like, let's see sort of where, you know, this team can sort of fit, because a lot of them, like I was saying, aren't, you know, are going to be back next year too. So if you have a lot of the same kids and you're competing at this kind of a level, you know, where again, there's potential for, again, you know, maybe a couple less mistakes, maybe again, a couple of, you know, things go a little bit differently for you, and you could be looking at possibly beating the second place in conference team. Like, you know, like I said, there was still a lot of other things that definitely did not go so right. Like it was honestly too, there again, other than the one defensive drive where we stopped them, most of the time it was like they would get like chunks of yards at a time, like 15 yards, like 20 yards sometimes. You know, again, sometimes we ended up stopping them where like it'd be like 3rd down, but then that was when they would like go off with like a really big play and they get like 10-15 yards, and you were like, oh my goodness, it was 3rd down, like we just needed one more play and stop them. And you know, then all of a sudden they have this big play that they come out with. So again, it was sort of tough defensively a little bit. But again, like I was saying, you know, there's a lot of, you know, like I said, building blocks for that. And, you know, like I said, looking at some of that stuff where like, you know, when you know you're going to kind of have the same team, like that was how like we always looked at youth football, was because you had the same kids that would go up and play through, you know, the youth system. And a lot of times you would have like different kids that would come in and stuff like that, but it wasn't like you were getting consistently new team every year. With high school, you are though. You're a lot of times getting this, you know, like like, okay, now your frost-off team are the ones that are going to then be, you know, potentially, you know, at the varsity level and stuff like that within a year or 2 years. But when a lot of the kids that you have right now are playing up at varsity, which means that they're good enough to play up at varsity and compete, you know, that's when you can be like, wow, like, you know, you have something to look forward to. So again, it's sort of different with that, you know, with like the way things change and stuff like that with a high school team versus, like I was saying, like, you know, when we were coaching at youth football, it was like you still had those kids that were going to be playing together most likely, and you know, like you could always still be like, okay, well, like, you know, we didn't get this team this year, but maybe we'll be able to get them next year. You know, we know how to maybe do things a little bit differently. We know their stud, you know, wide receiver or quarterback, or, you know, like they have this really good defensive lineman or whatever it is. Like, you sort of knew other teams, you know, like their specialty, you know, sort of players and stuff like that. And then with high school, it's like that changes consistently every year. It's one of the reasons too, guys, why I don't love watching college football, is because to me it's like so different. Like, you know, they'll be like, oh, they, you know, have this like senior quarterback that's playing or whatever now, and it's like, okay, but like I didn't, you know, like I don't know enough about them like to just watch them for 1 year and then see them go away. It's like, that's why it's like, you root for the team, but you don't really know enough to root for the players. Like, whereas like in the NFL, it's like you have an established team with established players, and for the most part, again, unless they're going through a rebuild and stuff like that, they're a lot of times the same players, so you get to sort of know them. Like, you know, that sort of thing. Like, you know who the quarterback is for that team. And again, longevity, like Tom Brady can stay on one team for a really long time until he finally ends up going somewhere else. But, you know, you have, again, like a set group of players a lot of times that wind up staying on a team for a while. And that's why, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of college football, because it's just, to me, I don't get to know the players well enough. And sometimes they don't even end up making it to the NFL. And, you know, so I don't know. It's just, I don't have that like connection as much to like the college football sort of like, you know, experience, I guess, as much as I do to like the NFL. But like I was saying too, that's sort of the same thing that you have in like a high school setting, is where like you only have those kids for, you know, like most likely they're playing down at one of the lower levels for their first year or two, unless they're complete studs, like I said, or also too, you just don't have enough kids at a varsity level. Like, that's also sometimes a little bit what we struggle with. Like, I think my dad said that we had to bring up a kid or two from the frost-off team because we didn't have enough kids at varsity, because like some kids got hurt and stuff like that. So like that was one thing. But again too, with high school, it's like, unless that's happening, you only have normally about 2 years sometimes with like those varsity kids. As a fan of the sport, you don't really get to know a lot of those players that much. Like, also too, at the same thing at a high school level. But again, when I'm telling you guys, like, you know, this team can compete for a while, you know, because some of these kids are still, you know, going to be around for the next year or two. And also too, just, you know, the same thing with like a new head coach. You're only here, you know, only been here for a year. So there's certain things that maybe, you know, like the coach that we've had has coached before, but just not with this, again, with this high school, this program and stuff like that. So I also think too, it's like a, you know, learning process for the coach, just in the environment too. Because like I was telling you guys too, like we struggle with having enough kids for the football team because we don't have a youth football program anymore. So like a lot of the kids that are playing at the freshman level, a lot of them have never played for the like youth football, because there wasn't like a team at that level. I think the sophomores were technically the last team, although some of those, like I was telling you guys, the one freshman that we coached, actually, he I think was actually playing up with then what would be the sophomore kids, because there wasn't a team for him at his level. And the same thing too with a couple of other kids, but I think that a lot of them are, I want to say that they are sophomores. I think was, like I said, the last level that was there as far as like the age group goes for the youth football. So that's why like those are like the last kids. So like they're gonna struggle now to get kids to that have actually played and have experience playing football too. You're gonna get a lot of kids that have never ever played football. That's why I was saying, you know, it's a little bit of, you know, like I said too, like a learning curve for the coach too, and realizing like you don't have, you know, maybe some of those kids that you expected coming from like a youth program. Like, you know, so how do you change that? How do you, you know, like you teach some of those kids that again have never played football? Like you have to learn learned that that's something you have to do now because of the environment of, you know, like this school. So that was something that, like, I don't know that he knew so much, you know, like, especially coming into it as well. But that was, my dad was in the administration for the youth football up until, again, they didn't have any kids anymore to finish, you know, out any more seasons. So like I was saying, you know, there's that whole kind of thing as well. So anyways though, guys, I need to take a shower and get to bed. It's also freezing, frigidly cold outside. I have not warmed up since we've gotten home. I had on 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of pants. I had on like 3 sweatshirts, jackets, and things like that. I think I have 4 layers actually on, and a blanket and a gloves. My feet were actually what was the most cold because I didn't wear winter boots. That was my problem. I wore like regular, like more like not dress boots, but just like not like winter boots. And so my feet were very cold. I'm gonna not do that next week because I sort of noticed it last week, but it wasn't so cold that it was like that bad. This week the coldest thing was my feet, so now I've got to go take a shower and warm up a little bit. But I will see you guys all in tomorrow's vlog. If you guys did enjoy today's, make sure you guys give a big old thumbs up. If you guys are new, we'd love if you'd subscribe, and I'll see y'all very soon, shiny faces tomorrow. So bye guys.